ought to see people.
All right, welcome back to Alabama Gristmill cast to bring into light some stories that we covered on AlabamaPioneers.com and say hello.
Hello.
You can say hi.
Hi.
You're part of this podcast too. You're the one that has the stories and knows all this stuff. So
yeah,
but,
I like to sit back and listen to you though sometimes.
Well, so you got to stop being a mom and more of a podcast host, right?
I'll try to. It's hard to do. You're a mom all your life. You can't change.
First, we got a really good story today that's kind of probably been known throughout Alabama, but definitely not covered as much in the history books. Kind of a fun one. I think you'll really enjoy it. Stories about a lady named Millie.
That's right.
I guess, is that a good way to start it out there?
That's a good way to start out because it's actually a story that it used to be. I heard that it used to be taught in Alabama school textbooks, but then it just slipped by the wayside over time. Way a long time ago. They've named some streets after her in Montgomery, and people don't even realize that. I don't think she has a real interesting story. There's a lady named Millie. It's all about her.
Now, did she have a last name?
No, we only know her name is Millie because this was back, it was before 1792.
Okay, so we're talking about, pre-statehood? Is that pre-statehood?
Yeah, pre-statehood. She's probably one of the first settlers in the state of Alabama, to tell you the truth. Okay. And people don't even know about her. She was married to a British officer. Back during that time, a lot of people were trying to get away from the Revolutionary War. They didn't really want to fight it. They just wanted to have land and have freedom. And Alabama got to be kind of a state where people would flock to, or the territory, or the South. They used to call it the West back then.
They were just trying to live their life, basically.
They're just trying to live their life. They didn't want to be involved
anymore.
We're
trying to survive here, It's like
right, and they didn't want to fight the mother country, So some of them came down here, so the British were down here too, and they had a place in Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, that they were stationed, and evidently her husband was kind of fed up with it and decided they needed to set out and escape. But they had to get pretty far away, so they headed for Alabama, because if he was caught as a deserter, he would have been killed. So the two of them set out, and they headed west, and they got to around the Georgia-Alabama line and started to get settled a little bit into the place, and he died. And here she was.
They made their way, from my understanding, they made their way down the Chattahoochee River.
Right.
Didn't they? And they went on down to Cusetta?
Yeah.
On the state line there? Mm-hmm. So that's where they were on the state line? Okay.
Uh-huh. He was, here they did this on foot in the wilds of Alabama and Georgia around the time of about 1770s and 80s. We learned more about her by 1792. Here she was in this area all by herself with no family or other children or anything.
Oh, yeah, once her husband died.
They died. I mean, he died. But she didn't go back. She kind of stayed around, and she made friends with the Creek Nation, and the Creeks kind of accepted her and called her the medicine woman. I guess she knew a lot about treating with herbs and things like that.
Yeah, so that's true, because, you're kind of looking back when there was not many white settlements in the area. It's not like she moved into a town with a lot of people. It was more of it was the Wild West, as you say.
Really wild. It was wilderness.
Nobody else around except for the Creek Nation was around in that area, and I guess you would become friends with them.
Right. She really did, and she finally settled down near a creek in the area of Mount Meigs in Montgomery. There she set up a tow bridge for the creek and built a tavern. Got a license to operate it from the federal government, even.
So she became a kind of one of the first entrepreneurs, I guess, in the state of Alabama.
Right. Was a woman.
Was going down there to, say, okay, toll bridge will work, and
Right. Well, it was a little east of Mount Meigs where it was. The creek is still called Millie's Creek. And that's who it's named after, because that's where she was. And she lived there for a long time by herself. And, she had a stock and all kinds of things.
So she did the toll bridge, and then she also had a tavern? Well, I guess
yeah, she had a tavern.
Cool. Where was that really located? Do you know where that was?
Off of Millie's Creek, about 2 miles east of Mount Meigs. In fact, there's a street in Montgomery I passed several times. That's one, I realized that after I found this story. It was called Millie Creek Lane, I believe is the name of it. And it's not named after anybody recent. It's named after her.
I imagine the tavern's probably not still there anymore, is it?
No, it's not. And but she stayed there for many, many years. But that's not the end of the story about her, because she saved a young girl's life. She was involved with Native Americans, the Creek Nation, quite a bit, and over the gossip from them, she learned that the white girl had been captured, and so she began to ask questions about her, and finally she took some oxen and cattle and stock and just traded and bartered and got the child's release. The name of the girl was Temperance Ellis. The federal government...
What did she end up doing with the girl that she rescued?
She took her back home and raised her to like her own daughter, and then she lived with her a long time, but then the federal government...
Well, first of all, okay, I guess where's her parents?
Well, the federal government got to looking into it when they heard about her, and they searched for her parents, and they discovered that they'd been killed when she was captured, so there was nowhere for her to go except to her friends. It was hard on Millie, but she let her go because she thought of her as her daughter. The lady grew up and lived in Pike County, Alabama, grew to a ripe old age. In fact, she told the story a lot about Millie.
Well, how long did she stay with her? Roughly, you got any idea? The daughter, Temperance.
I don't have I don't know exactly, but she had to been a little bit older. I guess she was still a young girl because she had to be raised by friends, so it didn't tell the ages. It gives you an indication that she did stay with her for a good long time.
Was that pretty much the end of it, or is that the end of the story?
No, there's a little bit more.
She keeps going.
She keeps going. There's just a lot, and the more you look at,
she's saving people's lives, and she's a medicine woman. She's an entrepreneur, and she's all this. Now, what else we got?
Okay, well, she married again. She didn't just stay single, believe it or not. First time she married a Creek Native American. Later, it's believed that she married Jesse Evans. It's hard to get real accurate data, over that period of time. So that's why I say it was believed that she did.
Oh, you can't just look. You just can't look it up. They couldn't enter all that into the internet or
no, they don't do that. Basically, you wish they would. It's like, tell me a little bit more.
About the 1700s.
Yeah, you have to compare letters, notes, and everything else, trying to find little pieces of information. But anyway, she is believed to have married Jesse Evans because there's a tavern. Her tavern was changed to Evans Tavern. So she must have been nice. She let it go from Millie's Tavern to Evans Tavern. And
that makes sense.
The reason you know how we know that?
No, how do we know that?
Okay, that was another little story that we'll get into later on down the line.
But you can tell me a brief story about it.
I'll tell you a little brief story.
Okay.
Vice President Aaron Burr was, killed Hamilton, and he was arrested for treason. And that's the other story I'll tell you down the line.
We know all about Aaron Burr because of that Broadway show out there now.
Oh, yeah.
Hamilton and everything. So that kind of brings that really to light.
Yeah,
this little anecdote is kind of a little add-on to that, which is kind of nifty.
Yeah, if you go to know about the play and know the story of that, then you can understand this a little bit better. But believe it or not, he got arrested and captured again. Aaron Burr got arrested and captured in Alabama. And I have a whole story about how he got captured on the website. He was arrested in Alabama, and on their way back, the guards stopped off at the old Millie's Tavern, which was called Evans Tavern at the time. And so everybody knew about Millie's Tavern and Evans Tavern because that was a stopping off place. In fact, her supposedly husband, Jesse Evans, guided the guards and Aaron Burr across the rain-swollen creek in Alabama.
Yes, it's amazing the story that is. And I was just wondering, is there any place in Alabama where you can actually see like buildings of that era or that time frame that maybe Millie was living in?
Oh yes, there's a great place right in Montgomery. I mean, you can go see the creek while you're there, but you can go to Old Alabama Town right in downtown Montgomery. And they have all these restored buildings and tell you about how life used to be. In fact, they have tours in the fall. You just look it up online.
Actually, never even heard of that place.
Oh, it's wonderful. The
website.
They're the actual buildings. They've restored them, a lot of them, and they right in downtown Montgomery. It's right close to a lot of the convention centers. So if you go there on a convention, it's a good place to visit.
What's the website?
It's oldalabamatown.com. Yes, the Historical Society has done a wonderful job up there saving these old buildings.
So, that's pretty cool.
And I mean,
where in Montgomery is
right
that?
Downtown,
is it downtown
Montgomery. Yeah, right.
It's right downtown. Okay,
it's right
cool.
downtown. I would advise just going to the website. And you can get all the particulars and, any tours they've got. I think they do some things on Halloween and Thanksgiving. They do a lot of things in the fall. So I would just check it out and see what's available if you're in the area.
Cool. So you can get a good taste of how life was for Millie, and imagine her back running her tavern and saving kids and rescuing kids and all that kind of stuff. So
they've got some taverns back there, so you can see what it looks like.
That would kind of bring it alive there. Here you have this lady has moved down to the state of Alabama, or not the state at the time, but the region, and then does all this, and this all turns into tying in with Aaron Burr.
Yeah, that happens all the time. That's the way you get little pieces of information from one story, and then something's mentioned about another, and you got a whole new story to start with. And that's the exciting part of finding stories like this that have been sitting there for years.
I guess so. How did you kind of research this story? Where did this story come from? I guess what was the main source of this information that you got here?
Well, I probably never could tell you right now, but I'm sure it just came out of looking up old taverns, I found not a picture, but a story about Millie's Tavern.
You remember driving across the Millie's Creek, and you kind of wanted to go from there, and then at that point you kind of go and find the history of that area and the taverns, and then you can go in and kind of dig deeper, and it just kind of the details kind of just expand from there. Is that right? Is that kind of how it works?
Exactly. You look at, we have some good historians that wrote a lot of stories, and they actually, Albert Pickett was was the first really noted historian that put things down in books for us, and he is
this region, for this area,
for Alabama
in general.
That's where we learned a lot of our Alabama history from, is from his work that he did, and he talked to these people that knew them. So that's pretty a large amount of them. But what is funny is you can read some of the things he used, and others disagree, and here and there. You put it all together, and you wind up with a story, taking pieces from everybody. You get a pretty good story about what's going on.
Once you understand the different slants and the different even agendas of some of these the writers, and that's why you look at all the different sources you have and kind of make a good picture of what actually happened.
What I liked about this story is it is about a woman, Yeah. It's very few stories that were written about women in Alabama. And because
I imagine she was quite the character back in the day.
I bet she was.
Obviously, to be that strong, to be that independent, be able to pull off everything that she did, and then have those stories written and shared, must have been a very popular and, if not, just a dynamic person.
Right. I'd like to meet her. That's what I do. I kind of fall in love with some of these people when I get to reading about them. I just wish I could meet them. But you meet them through the stories. So that helps. And if we preserve them and keep talking about them, they stay alive in our memory. And we're thankful that they did what they did, because made Alabama what it is today. And
it just kind of brings me back to the thing I kind of enjoy hearing about these stories is, you drive through the different towns in the state of Alabama, and you see these road signs, you see these historical markers, you see these names of creeks that are kind of strange, and you're like, well, I wonder what that's about. Why, why was that Millie's Creek?
Right.
And it looks kind of, boring on a sign, Millie's Creek.
Right.
But then you look behind it and you find what an amazing woman this was and what she had done. And it's just fascinating.
And what she had overcome. I mean, our ancestors are really strong people back then. They had to deal with a lot. And I just feel like it's nice to be able to honor them.
Yeah, definitely does that. And we've got plenty more of those and plenty of deep dives or deep looks into the history of those various monuments and signs that you've seen all throughout the state, and those stories that are not even memorialized or remembered.
Yeah, I can't write them and post them fast enough on the website. I just seem to run out of time. There's so many of them, and then share. And I'm sure every listener out there has a story they heard, that they could share too down the line. We try to cover as many as we can, but and
that's kind of what we're trying to feel out with the podcast. So you'll see us adjust some things over time and do more of this, do less of this. We're kind of rookies at all this. We just kind of we're going to go cover a lot of different stories. I mean, and really, and also kind of give some hints on how to, do this research or go out and find out this information yourself. And, the tricks we've kind of learned over time. We might be covering that. Well, we will be covering that.
We have many, many, many stories to tell.
So, like we've always said, you can find them on the website, alabamapioneers.com. We'll put the details on this particular Millie story in the show notes, so you can kind of get access those quickly there. And please subscribe to the podcast. Please share it with your friends. Let them know we got something out there. We'll try our best to be putting out something good and interesting every week. We might miss a couple marks here and there, but we'd love you to have your comments as well. You can comment on the website, Facebook page, and any comments you have and suggestions, things like that. So we'll listen to those. And any questions, we might even come up with a segment where we can answer your questions. So
yeah, this is all just trial and error. We're kind of seeing which way we want to go with this. So
yep. And so hopefully you'll enjoy them, and we can keep doing these for you. But we'll go ahead and wrap up. I guess the story of Millie, and we'll say, I guess, Millie of Montgomery.
Millie of Montgomery.
We'll wrap that up, and then we'll see you next episode. Until then,
goodbye.
Goodbye.
And remember, you're making your own legacy every day.
Oh, honey.